Hey guys, Alex from 7th Hour Films back again with My Hero Academia. Last time on My Hero Academia we had Smoldering Flames, where first off, Gran Torino and Tsukauchi went after Kurogiri and they did apprehend him. However, they first met another protege of All for One in Gigantomachia. Which actually, here's something interesting. So I was actually rewatching some episodes from this season, and I went back to where we got pretty much Kirishima's backstory, and the villain that was asking where, I think it was like where a hero agency was, and then Mina comes in and is like, oh, it's over there, and she basically directs him. I didn't even, I go back and I realize, oh my god, that's Gigantomachia. That was him in that flashback. Like, oh, okay. So, that's interesting. Meanwhile, everyone else was heading back to UA, with the exception of Mirio, who was going to stay a little bit longer. And, yeah, they went back. Everyone in Class 1A was concerned about the 4 work-study students. And then we also had Bakugo and Todoroki heading off to their provisional license training. This time, instead of with Mr. Aizawa, they were being accompanied by All Might and Present Mike. But unbeknownst to All Might, Endeavor was there, and he wanted to have a man-to-man talk, which hopefully we will see in this episode. I really want to see that talk. Also, there are some of those from Shiketsu, some students from Shiketsu, including Yawarashi, who we saw failed, the meatball guy, who is not there to get his license, but he is there to at least observe. And also, the actual Kami is there, which is pretty cool. So yeah, the actual Kami is there, but they haven't really talked about the fact that she had to have been kidnapped by the League of Villains, and then she, Toga turned into her. They haven't really addressed that, so maybe we'll address that in this episode. I don't know. But yeah, we've got some sort of an interesting shift, basically, in story, because I assume this episode is going to be following our provisional license trainees. So yeah, that is pretty much that. Like always, the reaction is in the description and in the pinned comment, and we should go ahead and get started on this episode of My Hero Academia. Here we go. Okay, interesting episode, definitely. Not what I would have expected, but okay. So they're going to have a fight with the kids, but they can't go all out, or else that'd just be a bit too much. But they can't let them win either. Here's the thing, though. Okay, so the teacher is concerned that they have really strong quirks. But what she doesn't realize is that they are facing Katsuki Bakugo, Shoto Todoroki, and Inasa Yawarashi. And Kami, but we don't really know what her power is, so I'm just going to... I can't really speak for that, But still, at the very least, they are fighting Katsuki Bakugo, Shoto Todoroki, and Inasa Yawarashi. They are not to be taken lightly. Number 1... Katsuki Bakugo is ungodly powerful and doesn't really restrain himself. I would love to see how these kids deal with a howitzer impact. Shoto Todoroki, he was literally bred to be incredible. Bred and trained to be incredible. And Inasa Yawarashi did better than Todoroki. So, he did better than Todoroki in the obstacle course race for the recommendations. So, these kids have, one of them has a cannon mouth. A cannon mouth. One of them, I'll look.
Heroes is over. Careful! Don't hurt them! Ha! You guys aren't fooling anybody! We're better than...
One of them has rings. One of them has a weird horn. Maybe like a scorpion horn thing. One of them has balls. One of them has flowers. One of them appears to be floating, and one of them looks like he has a stick. And a bunch of them in the back look like demons. And once again, they are fighting Katsuki Bakugo, Shoto Todoroki, and Inasa Yawarishi. Like, think about it. These kids, they don't have experience. They don't have fighting experience. They don't have intelligence. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not worried about our trainees. I'm not worried about our trainees because they are trained. They are trained. Shoto Todoroki has taken on the hero killer. Bakugo has taken on All Might. You know? They both took on Moonfish. Bakugo had to take on most of the League of Villains. You know? At Kamino, he had to dodge them. He dodged them for quite a while. He couldn't beat them, but he dodged them for a while. So, that's the thing, you know? So I'm not worried that a bunch of elementary school students are going to be a problem for Katsuki Bakugo, Shoto Todoroki, and Inasa Yawarishi. Now, I get the dilemma, at least, that they can't go all out, or else they could seriously injure these kids. But they don't want to just throw the match, because that's not going to help anything. But still, I mean, while they're all like, we're better than you, like, look at us, Todoroki freezes them all. There you go. The end. Match over. You know? Match over, Todoroki wins. That's just Todoroki. That's half of Todoroki, so I don't feel concerned. You know? And I get, you know, this teacher, this adorable teacher, doesn't know who these trainees are. But still, when one of them is the son of Endeavor, you kind of sit back and think, okay, so we have, 20 elementary school kids who have no combat experience. I don't know why I'm harping on this, I guess, because I guess I've made my point, but still, I just, like, maybe because that was the cliffhanger, you know? Because that was the cliffhanger of the episode, like, oh, how are they, can they win? And it's like, yeah, of course they can fucking win, you know? Of course they can fight. I haven't watched 3.5 seasons of this show to think they can't beat a bunch of 10-year-olds. You know? Probably less than 10-year-olds. They're probably younger than that. I don't give a shit what quirks they have, you know? Now that sounds, you know, it does sound like, hey, if they are somewhat strong quirks, then hey, maybe they'll make somewhat strong heroes once they actually get training. But they have no training. And not only are you dealing with two very powerful students who have trained at UA, well, no, one who's trained at UA, one who's trained at Shiketsu, you're also dealing with a guy who has trained his literal entire life to fight. You know why he's that damn good? Is because he was trained by his father for his entire life. So, I'm sorry I'm harping on this, but it's just like I don't feel the cliffhanger. I'm like, who fucking cares how powerful they are? And again, it is a good point that it's like, okay, well, you can't go all out, but you can't throw the match. So that'll be a bit tricky, but honestly, it's one of those things where it's like, I guess I know it's going to be tricky, but I'm not worried about them, like, losing. Like, no. They're not going to fucking lose. It took, even All Might, like, it took a while for All Might to kind of put down Bakugo, and he was holding back and everything, and he wasn't going all out and stuff, but it's like, look, All Might restrained still. It still was a bit of a drawn out fight between them. But even like Todoroki going all out against Stain, I don't know. I'm gonna move on because I could just talk about that forever. So we do have our training, which is interesting. I like that, the cliffhanger of last episode is like, oh shit, it's Gang Orca again. Gang Orca's got to teach these students how to fight, and he's training them. It's very interesting that, like, he's brought in for the training as the cliffhanger, but then he brings in the children, So that's very interesting. So yeah, and then we have kids, which, I mean, it's very clever, winning the hearts of these kids, because that's what a hero has to do. Who wouldn't have a fucking problem with this, probably? Well, at the very least, All Might. Midoriya, probably. But, I don't know. I mean, you look at some of them, like, you would think Yoarashi wouldn't have a problem. But he fucked up left and right, too, Yoarashi, honestly, of all of them, like, he's always got, I can make friends with anyone, and he's always smiling. It's like, he's kind of like, I guess that archetype that we have on this show now of heroes that smile, this philosophy of a hero smiling that, like I said, I guess it was 2 episodes ago, but I said, like, or maybe it was last episode, yeah. But, when I said, like, okay, this philosophy of a hero that smiles, that, as far as we know, starts with Shimura. But honestly, that does, we see how that philosophy has kept going, even for people that don't realize it, like Yoarashi, like, he has that down, he didn't even think about it, that's just the kind of guy he is, But even he's fucking up here. So I'm trying to think, like, okay, if we had the other Class A students in here, how would they fare? And it's like, okay, well, probably not much better, because they were even, fucking with Yoarashi. So, yeah, it would be difficult, but still, like, I guess it's just that it's more difficult for Todoroki and Bakugo to deal with this. I like that all the girls hate Kami. Well, first off, it's like, she tries to hug the one kid, and it's like, girl, that doesn't help, because when you hug, people's faces get right in your boobs, because they're just out. They're just out because you literally wear a bodysuit, a skin-tight bodysuit. So that's the thing. That didn't work, and so she turned all the girls against her. So yeah, but it is very interesting. It's like, okay, how do you win over these kids? And that is something a hero needs to deal with. And not only does a hero need to know this, these guys need to know this. Particularly, edgelord Shoto Todoroki and walking anger management problem Katsuki Bakugo, So I'll be curious how that goes on. We'll have to see. Also, Kami. So we got an explanation that she doesn't remember, like, being kidnapped or anything. So presumably she was, like, drugged, basically. And then she was just knocked out and she didn't know what had happened. But Shiketsu has figured out that it was Toga that basically mimicked, became a copy of Kami. So yeah, so that's interesting. So they're just keeping a low profile about it. Basically, they haven't really told her, So that's pretty interesting. So at least they have that explanation. I'm glad they said that. I wrote down Mike. That was funny. Mike has to go down there and be the commenter. You know, what also makes me wonder is if Mr. Aizawa was here, you know, because this is also one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, you know, these heroes that, you know, they need to work with these kids, but there's also, you know, a ton of heroes like Endeavor that's like, yeah, this would be hard for him too. He'd probably be like Bakugo, like, fuck you, we're fighting, you know? But then I you know, you kind of stop and think like, well, okay, what if Mr. Aizawa was here? He probably wouldn't care. If Aizawa was going through this training, he'd be like, what the fuck ever, I'm just doing my job, look. It's like, oh, we're gonna fight you because we're better than... Nope. I'm just gonna deactivate your quirks and just punch you. So I maybe Aizawa would be alright. He just wouldn't care. So anyway, but yeah, I did like that Mike having to commentate, and then I liked what the fuck is the name of the guy that plays, or the guy from Shiketsu? I don't know his name. So I don't know. Let's see. Okay. Now for the really interesting stuff, Endeavor. Endeavor wants to know how to be the symbol of peace, because he recognizes that he recognizes what All Might was able to do, you know, when he was in his prime. This, you know, it's like, oh, this thing you built up in your prime is starting to crumble. Yeah, the pillar that he set out to be. And that was interesting. I like how they also mentioned that Endeavor became the number 2 hero by the time he was 20. That's, what, 2 years after leaving UA? That is ridiculous. 2 years after graduating from UA, Endeavor became the number 2 hero. But that also does show there is still an age gap between him and All Might. So I would imagine that Endeavor is probably around his 40s, you know, maybe early to mid 40s, and then we've always speculated, but one of you guys said that it's possible that All Might is in his early to mid 50s, which I would believe that, you know. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. But yeah, at 20 he became the number 2 hero, but he knew. He pretty much always knew that he would never be able to climb to number 1, you know? So yeah, so he wants to know what makes the symbol of peace. And yeah, honestly, that is hard for All Might to explain. It's not really something that I can be like, oh, well, you know, you need to do this, 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 and this. It's like, it doesn't work like that, you know? And he did admit, it's like, look, you know, like how Endeavor was like, oh, well, if I had just wanted to be number 1, I could have been nicer along the way, and maybe that could have worked. But no, I wanted to be number 1, and that is what, you know, basically set me off on everyone, essentially. And All Might did admit, I like how he admitted, like, look, I had to turn away from people's kindness to walk this path, you know? I had to walk away from people in order to be the symbol of peace. And that, honestly, yeah, being the symbol of peace kind of also took a toll on him, you know? It basically was, you know, yes, he was the symbol of peace for the good of the world, but it wasn't necessarily good for Toshinori Yagi, the man, you know? So I did really like that. And yeah, it makes sense. It's like, look, I can't really explain it to you, man. He can't explain it, but I also liked what he said of like, look, I had a goal, you know, back then when shit was scary back then, you know, crimes were on the rise. Everyone was on edge all the goddamn time. And I wanted to be, you know, a light, a beacon of hope. And that's what I did. You know, it's like you can't really get two ways around that. It's like, look, that's who I was, that's who I am, that's what I wanted to be, and that's what I did, you know? And I like how he also says to Endeavor, look, you and I are two different people. We're not the same. That's been obvious for 20 years, or however long Endeavor's been a hero, that the two of them are fundamentally different as heroes. But I like what he says, like, look, what kind of hero do you want to be? And it's interesting asking Endeavor this, you know, at the age he is now, where he presumably has been the number 2 hero then for, maybe 20 years, you know? Like, he has been the number 2 hero, at least for a very long time. You know, if he's in his mid-40s and he became it at 20, you know, we're looking between 20 and 30 years he's been the number 2 hero. And it's interesting to ask him now, what kind of hero do you want to be? You know? And it does beg the question, what kind of hero do you want to be? Do you want to be the best? Or do you want... it may honestly come down to, do you want to be the best? Or do you want to be a hero? You know? It's... I don't know. It's something like you could honestly say that maybe Endeavor now has to do some soul searching in order to figure it out, because, yeah, times are changing. You know, before he spent the last 20, 25 years, you know, going through like, fuck it. I am who I am. And, you know, and he kept trying to get number 1, but it just didn't work. And now it's basically that he spent like everything he ever did was to be number 1. But none of that actually resulted in him being number 1. What let him be the number 1 hero was the last guy retired. So he is the de facto number 1 hero. And so he's like, oh, but what I've done for the past 20, 25 years, that hasn't worked. That is not the number 1 hero, clearly. Or else I would have been. That is not the number 1 hero. And now that I am, I need to think some things through. How can I be the number 1 hero? It almost sounds like he's trying to figure out what makes me worthy of being number 1. You know? What can I do to be worthy of that title? Because he's tried everything and it didn't work. But now it's handed to him on a silver platter and he needs to figure out, okay, why do I deserve this? You know? Why do I deserve this? Not just because he's probably thinking, I'm not the best. I'm not the best. I am number 1 in name only. Number 1 was, and kind of, even though he's not technically, he still is. It's All Might. He's still number 1. You know? Even if he's retired, he's still number 1. So Endeavor's thinking like, okay, if it's left to me, why do I deserve to be number 1 now? You know? Because it almost feels like he needs to figure out what does he do, or what can he do to actually rightfully deserve the title of number 1 hero. And it's honestly something that he could only think of now, after All Might has retired. You know, beforehand, maybe if he had thought about it beforehand, it could have worked, but he was still under the impression that if he kept going, maybe it could work. But he recognizes that he is number 1, not because of anything he has done in the past 25 years. So he needs to figure out, okay, I've been given the title of number 1. Why? Why should I keep this? You know? Why should I remain as number 1? The world needs the number 1 hero and the symbol of peace. They need number 1. But I have always been number 2. And he needs to figure that out. Good shit all around. Back to the dumb fucking kids. Anyway, because we're just kind of going, you know, obviously we're going in order of notes, so I just look back and it's like, oh yeah, Todoroki sucked at talking. So I just remembered that. That was funny. He started giving his whole character bio and that didn't work. And yeah, we're going to have the sparring match, much to the concern of the adorable teacher. So, and I'm sorry, but she just is. It's just one of those things. She's all like, you know, says like, I failed as a teacher. I was like, just want to protect her. She's so, you know, but yeah. So, which, I mean, judging by the quirks these kids have, yeah, I can understand an elementary school teacher is maybe not equipped to deal with them. But you know who is? Katsuki Bakugo, Shoto Todoroki, and Inasa Yoarashi. Potentially Kami, but we don't know her quirk yet, so. So yeah, I guess that's basically it. Great episode. Really, really enjoyed it. Posed some deep questions for Endeavor. And also posed stupid shit with the elementary school kids thinking they could take fucking UA and Shiketsu students. All I want to see is these kids getting their collective asses kicked. Like, I just... Fuck these arrogant kids. I want Bakugo to blow them all to smithereens. But he can't. And he has to figure out how to beat them without fucking murdering them. A bit of a challenge. But I will be very curious to see how they're going to do that. So, yeah. That is basically it. With all that being said, I'm Alex from 7th Hour Films, and I will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of my Hero Academia reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure to hit the notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.